Credits added.
Welcome to the definitive course on creating your first game art sword from scratch all the way into Unreal 5. In this thorough course, we will create 100% game-ready swords geared for complete beginners, and we'll be updating this course to add more intermediate and advanced methods and swords, complete with 3D modeling and unwrapping in Maya, baking and texturing in Substance Painter, implementing your sword in Unreal 5, and for bonus content, adding 2 awesome VFX to your weapon. Even if you've never used these software packages before, we go through everything like navigation and hotkeys, so no need to worry. All in a real-time friendly, super low poly, scalable, expertly crafted, clean art. Each of the swords and visual effects we cover are optimized to not negatively affect frame rate, even in larger games like RPGs and multiplayer. We use only industry standard software, but if you're more comfortable with other software packages such as Blender, you should be able to follow along just fine. A lot of what we cover is best practices and optimization. We go over even how using simple geometry, you can make some really cool weapons and props. Substance Painter is by far the most awesome 3D texturing software on the market, and you can usually get a free trial and student discounts. For our bonus visual effects content, we use Unreal 5's Niagara Next Generation Visual Effects Creation System. It's a visual particle system that utilizes modules, freeing the VFX artist from any need of programming. You also create your first materials in Unreal node-based editor. We go over how to make a dark shadow sword and a final lightning sword effect, both of which makes your weapons really pop and feel enchanted. This is how you create an arsenal for your game and make each combat swing more satisfying for the player. These steps we go over can be used to make any props for any game like first-person shooters, RPGs, MOBAs, or any kind of game that needs cool weapons for combat or awesome story-driven props. Starting out with our basic weapon, then adding VFX can be something that comes from character buffs, enchantments, or rare props and items. All major games with combat systems use tons of visual effects, and for greater impact to get players excited to start swinging. When you purchase this course, you will get all of our finished assets ready for download, like the finished swords, Maya binary files, finished Substance Painter files, textures, and finished VFX U assets that are created for this course. You will also get the future assets ready for download as we update the course with more advanced swords and visual effects. So make sure to buy this course early before the price goes up as we update the tutorials. This way, if you get stuck at any point, you can check out our files for your notes to more easily follow along. No need to worry about gathering assets or anything. It's all provided for you. We also include our Discord community, where we have a course Q&A forum for you to ask any questions, get feedback on your work, and check for questions already answered. We will start this course by downloading the asset pack in the resource folder and creating our first folder system base, which helps keep our files organized. It's very easy to lose track of files. This is a simple solution to have everything in one place, and will be an expectation in industry. We will then download the best industry standard reference software, and I explain how easy it is to gather reference with it, how to use all the hotkeys, how to crop images and pack them together, how to add text labels to organize your reference board, and how to scale and move our software window around to make sure it always stays in the front on top of your software. This way, you don't have to tab out just to see your reference board, or have to have a second screen dedicated for your reference board. Then, for all of our Maya users, we'll download the best auto-smoothing MelScript package. We go through how to install it and create a quick button using Maya's script editor. But don't worry, you will never have to code in this course. This script saves us hours of time, and I personally use it on every 3D model I make. We'll then begin in Maya 2024, where we'll learn how to navigate around the Maya scene, explore Maya's main UI options, how to maneuver your main camera, and spawn objects into our scene. We'll next learn how to manipulate geometry using Maya's widget and Maya's core quick menu system. This allows us to shape geometry however we want with faces, edges, and vertices. And we'll go over fast ways to select multiple faces all at once rather than one at a time. The faster we get at manipulating geometry, the faster we can get awesome props made for our games. We then start our first model with a fun practice lecture where I go step by step on how to model a snowman. In this practice, we find out how to use Maya's outliner, how to duplicate and resize meshes to model faster, how to cut geometry with the multi-cut tool, and how to use extrusions to make a top hat for our snowman. The course gets more challenging as you go along, so for our more advanced users, you might want to skip this beginning section, or go over it just for a refresher. We then spawn a cube to start modeling our first sword. We learn how to activate and use symmetry, which helps shape both sides at once, cutting our work in half on mini props. We also need to make sure that we're using symmetry mirroring in the proper direction. We then dig deeper into Maya's options by making the handle and handguard. We go over how to use the primitive mesh input menu, making it easy to optimize our polygons quickly and evenly with our subdivision sliders. We go over how to delete geometry, how to extrude the handguard and taper it for a more stylized flare, then how to mirror geometry and how to adjust mirror direction. We then go through one of the hardest parts of making assets for Mini, which is the UV unwrapping stage and Maya's UV editing tab. We'll go over texture resolution, how to use shaded mode to quickly check for UV overlapping, manipulating UV shells, and how to use my favorite UV tool, camera-based, on your model. We'll go over best practices to use mirroring geometry to our advantage to share the same UV scale, and how to pack all of those shells into one sheet ready for texturing. These will be the fastest and easiest ways to make clean UVs to help get you past this step like a pro. We then wrap up with Maya, creating a new material for all the pieces of our sword, and how to rename our material, and proper naming conventions that studios will expect you to know and use. We then learn how to delete history and optimize our scene size to reduce file size and fix some Maya errors. This way, when you export your files, they're smaller using less computer memory, but then also your files for the game, which means your game file size will also be smaller. Then we go over how to set our project and set up incremental saves that allows us to save to the same folder directory. We also learn activating quick autosaves in case Maya crashes or your files become corrupt, so we will have backups. Then using that smooth button that we created with the Mel script before exporting out of Maya, we'll then head over to Substance Painter to learn how to set up a new project scene in Substance and what starting options to use depending on your resolution needs. We go over basic navigation in the 3D scene and UV scene. We'll then learn how to go back into Maya to make edits and re-import back into Substance Painter without having to start a new project. We then start our baking process, where we head to texture set settings and start baking our mesh maps. We learn the importance of baking and best settings to use for our simple sword, since we are not using a high poly for the first one. We then learn how to use the layers tab, which is where the texturing magic begins. In this tab, we create organization folders for each piece of our sword. Then how to add colors for each individual piece. We go over how to use Substance Painter's awesome masking brushes to make sure our textures are isolated to only their mesh and not spilling over to the other pieces. We go over some fast shortcuts to be able to texture a mesh quickly without having to waste time manually painting everything. We use the wireframe selection mode and mesh filling to our advantage. We then discuss the basics of roughness map slider and what you may use it for. We learn how to save time by duplicating base colors and putting them into new folders. How to use Substance Painter's color pick and color wheel settings. We go over how to soften and harden edges to get a real chunky metal feel. And for our last section for the first sword mesh that we go over before getting into Unreal is exporting out our textures and understanding the basics of Substance Painter's output template texture nodes and global settings. We learn how to export only what we want and save into our folder system. We also touch on the differences between two most popular texture types and why you might use one over the other. Then ending with proper texture name conventions, which is really important for large-scale projects to be able to find everything as your game scales. Then we move on to the bonus VFX portion to make our sword look even cooler. We first go back into Maya to combine all of our sword pieces into one and export it out. Then we'll duplicate the blade only as the mesh that we'll use for the lightning and dark magic VFX. We learn how to change the UVs to adapt it to the VFX pipeline and why it's important to export it separately from the sword. We'll next go into Unreal Engine's website to download and install the Epic Games Launcher client. We'll see how to get the latest version of Unreal, which in this case is 5.4. We go over basic import settings and how to create a material using Unreal's Material Editor graph. We'll do this using our exported textures from Substance Painter. We'll have an overview of Niagara's viewport and navigation. We'll discuss the difference between a system and an emitter in Niagara, and we'll create the 3 emitters that will be used for our sword VFX. Then we'll do a brief overview of the translucent and additive material blend modes, and a little bit on bug troubleshooting. Back inside Niagara, we'll discuss how to change the size and colors of our mesh. Then we'll learn how to customize preview scene settings to your preferences. This will add a cool glowing edge to your blade to help frame it and have it stand out. We'll then start building our lightning material base using the noise node, 1- node, and panner node. We'll go over a couple of keyboard shortcuts to make your workflow even faster. Then, we'll learn how to manipulate UVs inside the material editor. Finishing off our lightning VFX, we go over how to use the sine wave node in the material editor to create more interesting movement. And we'll learn how to quickly change the lighting within our scene. We'll go over system and emitter lifetime settings, as this is something that can be tricky when you're starting out, but is key to understanding for VFX development. This will help you understand the differentiation between a system and an emitter in Niagara. In the extra bonus material, we have an overview of the nodes used and the numbers inside them. going over customization options to make this effect our own, and how we can change the base color of our sword in Niagara to make it look more dark and evil. We go over how to correct rendering order when you're using multiple materials of the same type. That way, nothing is hidden. Everything we go over in this course is using best practices in our pipelines used in the games industry. Even if you're new to development, it's really important to try to optimize everything that you make and build everything around budget and frame rate as much as you can. This is especially important for multiplayer games and large projects like RPGs. This is just the first part of our 3-part course. We will send out announcements when we begin to update for our second intermediate phase. But for now, we got some swords to blacksmith, some buffs to cast, and skills to attain. Join our community of developers and level up your game art from a beginner to pro level. Get help and feedback over at our team on Discord to build up your art portfolio. This course is geared toward beginners to intermediate students. You don't even need any previous knowledge of Maya, Substance Painter, or Unreal Engine to get started. If you are interested in other learning resources, we have other Udemy courses, as well as hundreds of videos and live streams on our YouTube channel, Baka Bros Entertainment, where I'm actively making my next game, Chaos Kart. If you're ready to have some fun making some awesome weapons, props, and VFX, get ready to learn a ton. Let's all make awesome games together. And let's get to smashing barrels and cutting down our foes. See you in the course.
Level complete. Good job.
Level up.
Continue.